What is up, guys? Stu here. Next up from the film festival is another one of my most anticipated films of the year because it's from one of my favourite working directors, writers today, and that is Taika Waititi. It's his latest film, Jojo Rabbit, which has proven to be quite divisive amongst critics. People either love it or hate it, depending on who you ask. And I'm firmly in the love it camp. This film was fucking awesome. I loved it. It's essentially a satirical comedy film set in Germany in the 1940s, centered around a young Nazi boy who's training to become a Nazi, and he has an imaginary friend that is Hitler. That's it, that's the premise. The lead of this film really, really surprised me. He's played by Roman Griffin Davies. I don't know how old he is. He's a child, right? I don't know why I said that so strangely. But as far as child actors go, it can be difficult to get one that's good enough to hold an entire film. And I mean, Roman Griffin Davies here has absolutely no problem doing that. He nails the comedy in the film for me. And also, I was surprised to see how well he handled all the emotional scenes. With this and Hunt for the Wilder People, Taika just seems to have a talent for getting genuine good performances, comedic performances, which are all the more hard from young actors. It's so good. But alongside him, we got Thomasin McKenzie, who I love from Leave No Trace, and she's popped up in a few things this year, and she's doing great work here as well. Scarlett Johansson, who's great. Sam Rockwell, Stephen Merchant. It's a really great cast filled up with loads of comedic faces. I meant to say comedic actors, and that just sounds like they think they're ugly or something. They're not. They're all, on the whole, pretty beautiful. That's a weird tangent we don't need to go down. But Taika Waititi plays Hitler in this one. I think that's the main thing people want to come in and see how it did. Yeah, he's Hitler, and it's kind of amazing that he's playing Hitler. A Polynesian Jew playing Hitler. I was watching an interview where he said that the reason he did it is just, there's no better fuck you to Hitler. Yep, every scene that he's in is just so good. And you'd think that there'd be a fear that it would run the risk of getting a little bit stale every time he popped up. And at the beginning, I was kind of worried that he'd end up popping in every other scene and the joke would get a little bit old. But I'm happy to say it never got old for me. And I actually think that one of the impressive things about Taika Waititi's direction here is that he knows when enough is enough, and he knows when to let all the kind of Hitler being the imaginary friend joke step aside and let everything else take center stage in the film. And that's one of my biggest surprises, and one of the things I love so much about this film is that it knows how to balance all of the ludicrous satire and slapstick comedy with a lot of the really dark, depressing shit that it has to deal with in this film. Because ultimately it is about an incredibly dark time in human history, and I'm happy to say that it knows when to sort of put all the jokes aside, and it can get quite emotional. There's some genuinely heavy shit in here. I think it's a 12A in the UK, which basically means, I mean, anyone can go see it as long as you've got an adult with you. And there's some heavy shit in there for kids, right? It doesn't shy away from showing some of the dark shit that Nazis were doing to Jews. Like, there's a scene where we see a bunch of Jewish people just hanging in the streets, and it's not playing that for laughs. A lot of this film, you kind of assume it's doing one thing, and then it will just sort of slap you around the face with the reality, and you'll be like, oh, damn. That's kind of fucking dark. And moments like that can really hit you, and are all the more impactful when they come after some of the hilarious slapstick stuff that happens in this film. So I think it actually works really well in that sense. And the humour in the film is something that worked incredibly well for me as well. And I kind of expected that because I've loved everything Taika Waititi's done before this. Some of them better than others. Not all of his stuff always lands, but on the whole, I enjoy his sense of humour, and so I was prepared for kind of the way the humour would go in this film, and it really delivered in up front. If you're someone that enjoys his sense of humour, you're probably going to find a lot to enjoy in the humour here. It's just really fun, which is an incredibly unusual thing to say about a film set in Nazi dictatorship in Germany, but it is. And I admire the fact that Taika Waititi was able to pull off a film like this. It's incredibly difficult, and Lord knows a load of directors would have probably failed trying it, but it takes someone like Taika Waititi to just go for it and pull it off. And I genuinely don't feel like anyone but Taika Waititi could have made this film. And that's true about all his films. One of the things I really enjoy about him as a director is that he always has a way of surprising me with many different elements in the film, but ultimately his films feel like his films, and they do have a very particular style, and that's present here, and it definitely works. I was laughing out loud constantly, but it also really hit me at the end. And so I think a lot of the critics that are dismissing this as like, oh, it's taking the piss out of things which shouldn't be taking the piss out of, I just think you're wrong. I just don't agree with you at all on that front. But there's not one point in this film where I ever felt like, oh, that's a little bit too much. If anything, the jokes are playing it quite safe. And from some of the things I'd heard some people saying online about this film, I was expecting to have a lot less of the really heavy, dark shit in here. That being said, though, I don't think it's perfect, and it does fall into some of the traps which are present in a couple of Taika Waititi's other films. And that is that with some of his stuff, I don't know how to explain this really, but just bear with me. There sometimes tends to be a little bit of a dip between like the second and third act where it's transitioning into everything it needs to be saying and wrapping up. I don't know how best to describe them, but it's like the jokes are really coming, and then it can sometimes feel a little bit like we're getting a lot of the same stuff before it eventually goes into the new stuff and starts to land the ending. There was definitely a moment in this film where I was like, okay, if we're gonna do this for the next hour, I could see this getting a little bit tedious. But thankfully, within about 5 minutes for me, I was back on board and it was doing something different. And I ended up really, really liking the way this film goes. In many ways, I guess it could be seen as quite predictable in that you sort of know where these characters are gonna go and the lessons they're gonna learn. But I don't think that's necessarily a huge flaw with the film. And also, in some regards, this film doesn't really give a shit. And I know that can be an incredibly frustrating thing to say to counter criticisms, but I genuinely think this film it knows what it is and it knows what it's trying to do, and it's got a message, and it's only really interested in just giving you a good time and making you feel things and making you think certain things. And ultimately, if you're entertained by it, you got a smile on your face, then it's done its job, right? I was truly entertained by it, had a really, really great time. I laughed, I cried, I did everything. And side note, it has the best window dive since Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. So, it's got that going for it. But what about you guys? Have you seen Jojo Rabbit? Did you catch it at the festival, or are you excited to check it out when it does come out? Whatever you thought about it, let me know in the comments down below. We'll have a little chat. And as usual, if you enjoyed this video and you do want to see me talk about more shit, go ahead and click subscribe. New review every day from the festival. You've probably noticed, so click that notification bell, make sure you're not missing any of those when they go up. See you guys tomorrow for more yummy goodness in your eyeballs. But until next time, stay beautiful, motherfuckers.